In the shadowy glow of a London fog, a priceless ivory chessboard becomes the stage for a deadly game, where every move hides a motive and the king falls to a silent assassin. Welcome to the Ivory Chessboard, Checkmate for the Killer, a Hercule Poirot mystery that will twist your mind like a night's sleep. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and enjoy the story. If you're hooked, subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Chapter 1. The opening gambit. Picture this. It's a crisp autumn evening in 1930s London, where the elite gather not just for tea and crumpets, but for battles of wit over polished boards of strategy. Our story begins in the grand estate of Sir Reginald Hargrove, a man whose fortune was built on colonial ivory trades, and whose passion for chess rivaled that of the great masters. Sir Reginald, a portly gentleman in his late 60s with a moustache as sharp as his endgames, had invited a select group to his annual chess tournament at Hargrove Manor, a sprawling Tudor-style home nestled in the countryside, its halls echoing with the ghosts of old rivalries. The air in the drawing room was thick with anticipation and the scent of aged whiskey. Crystal chandeliers cast flickering lights on the centerpiece. An exquisite ivory chessboard, hand-carved from elephant tusks smuggled during the height of the British Empire. Each piece was a masterpiece, kings with crowns of tiny diamonds, queens adorned with rubies, and pawns that gleamed like forbidden treasures. Valued at over $50,000, it wasn't just a game set. It was a symbol of power, envy, and perhaps impending doom. Enter our guests, each with their own secrets tucked away like hidden rooks. First, there's Lady Evelyn Hargrove, Sir Reginald's much younger wife, a stunning beauty in her 30s with raven hair and eyes that could pierce through any defense. Married for convenience, whispers in high society suggested her affections lay elsewhere. Perhaps with the charming young chess prodigy, Victor Langston, a dashing American in his 20s who had risen from obscurity to challenge the best in Europe. Victor's quick smile and quicker mind made him a favourite, but his gambling debts were no secret, and Sir Reginald's ivory board could fetch a price to clear them all. Then we have Dr. Amelia Thorne, a brilliant strategist and one of the few women in the male-dominated chess world. In her 40s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense demeanour, she had beaten Sir Reginald in a public match years ago, earning his grudging respect but also his quiet resentment. Rumours swirled that she harboured a grudge over a lost inheritance tied to the Hargrove family. Rounding out the group was Colonel Marcus Blackwell, a retired military man with a scar across his cheek from some forgotten war. He played chess like he waged battles, ruthlessly, and his friendship with Sir Reginald dated back to their days in India, where they had acquired that very ivory board under questionable circumstances. The colonel was known for his temper, especially when losing, and lately he'd been arguing with Sir Reginald over unpaid loans. As the tournament commenced, the room buzzed with the clink of pieces on the board. Sir Reginald, ever the host, dominated the early rounds, his laughter booming as he checkmated opponent after opponent. "Ah, the thrill of the chase!" he'd exclaim, raising a glass to his victories. But beneath the joviality, tensions simmered. Lady Evelyn exchanged fleeting glances with Victor. Dr. Thorne scribbled furious notes in her journal, and Colonel Blackwell gripped his cane a bit too tightly after a humiliating defeat. The evening wore on, and as midnight approached, Sir Reginald announced a break for supper. The guests dispersed to freshen up, leaving the drawing room empty save for the ivory chessboard, mid-game, with pieces poised as if waiting for the next fatal move. It was during this interlude that tragedy struck. A piercing scream echoed from the study adjacent to the drawing room. Lady Evelyn's voice, shrill with horror. The group rushed in to find Sir Reginald slumped over his desk. An ornate dagger plunged into his chest, his blood staining the scattered chess pieces that had somehow tumbled from the board onto the floor. The Ivory King lay toppled at his feet, a grim symbol of checkmate. Chaos ensued. Victor was the first to arrive, his face pale as he checked for a pulse. None. Dr. Thorne, ever practical, examined the wound, a single, precise stab, no signs of struggle, suggesting the killer struck swiftly and perhaps from someone he trusted. Colonel Blackwell barked orders to seal the doors, his military instincts kicking in, while Lady Evelyn sobbed dramatically, clutching a handkerchief that seemed suspiciously dry. Enter Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, who happened to be a guest at a nearby estate and was summoned by a frantic telegram from the local inspector. Poirot, with his immaculate moustache, egg-shaped head, and twinkling eyes, arrived just as dawn broke, his little grey cells already whirring. "Mon ami," he said to the inspector, a bumbling chap named Jap. "This is no random act. The chessboard, it speaks volumes. Why disturb the pieces unless to send a message?" Poirot's initial inspection revealed clues that painted a puzzle of motives. The dagger was from Sir Reginald's own collection, an Indian artifact engraved with elephants, tying back to the ivory trade. No fingerprints marred its handle, wiped clean. The chessboard itself showed an unfinished game. White in a strong position, but Black's queen positioned for a deadly strike. Sir Reginald had been playing white. A crumpled note in his pocket read, "The pawn becomes the queen. Beware the promotion." Cryptic, yet Poirot's eyes lit up. "Ah, the game is afoot, but not just on the board." Questioning began. Lady Evelyn claimed she'd been in her room, but her alibi wavered when a maid mentioned seeing her near the study. Victor admitted to owing Sir Reginald money, but swore he'd never harm his mentor. Dr. Thorne revealed she'd argued with the victim over a rare book on chess history that he'd borrowed and never returned. Colonel Blackwell confessed to a heated exchange earlier that evening about old debts from their India days, but insisted it ended amicably. As Poirot paced the room, he noticed a faint ivory dust on the carpet. Fresh shavings, as if someone had tampered with a piece. "The killer," he murmured, "is clever, but not infallible. They left a trail in their haste." This chapter sets the stage for our mystery, introducing the players and the shocking murder that draws Poirot into the fray. We've met the suspects, glimpsed their secrets, and uncovered the first clues tied to that fateful ivory chessboard. But who among them delivered the fatal blow? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the alibis and deceptions in the next chapter. Chapter 2. The Knight's Gambit. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy drapes of Hargrove Manor, casting long shadows across the study where Sir Reginald's body had been found. Hercule Poirot stood by the ivory chessboard, his fingers tracing the air above the pieces, as if coaxing secrets from their silent ranks. The police had cordoned off the crime scene, but Poirot, with Inspector Japp's reluctant approval, was free to roam. His sharp eyes darted from the blood-stained desk to the scattered chess pieces on the floor, lingering on a single pawn that seemed out of place, its base slightly chipped, as if struck with force. "Curieux," he muttered, "a pawn that dares to stand alone." The household was in disarray. Servants whispered in corners, their eyes wide with fear, while the guests remained confined to the drawing room under Japp's orders. Poirot began his investigation by examining the study more closely. The room was a shrine to Sir Reginald's obsessions. Shelves lined with chess manuals, a globe marked with ivory trade routes, and a locked glass cabinet displaying antique weapons. One slot conspicuously empty where the murder dagger had once rested. A faint smell of cigar smoke lingered, though Sir Reginald was not known to indulge. Poirot's nose twitched. Someone was here. Perhaps not alone with the victim, he said to Japp, who scribbled notes with a sceptical frown. Poirot's attention returned to the chessboard. The game had been abandoned mid-move, with White's position strong but vulnerable to a cunning trap. He reconstructed the board in his mind, noting the Black Queen's aggressive stance. This was no casual game, he mused aloud. The killer knew the board's significance to Sir Reginald. To disrupt it was to strike at his heart before the dagger ever did. He pocketed the chipped pawn for later analysis, its ivory surface cool against his fingers. Moving to the drawing room, Poirot observed the suspects, each reacting to the tragedy in their own way. Lady Evelyn sat by the window, her face pale but composed, her fingers twisting a pearl necklace as if counting moves. Victor Langston paced near the fireplace, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his usual charm replaced by a nervous energy. Dr. Amelia Thorne sat at a side table, her journal open, scribbling furiously as if solving a puzzle of her own. Colonel Marcus Blackwell stood rigid by the door, his scar seeming to pulse with every clench of his jaw. Poirot began with Lady Evelyn, his tone gentle but probing. "Madame, you discovered the body, oui? Tell me, what drew you to the study at such an hour?" Her eyes flickered, but she answered smoothly, claiming she'd heard a noise, a thud perhaps, and went to investigate. "I thought Reginald might have fallen," she said, her voice catching. "I never imagined—" Poirot nodded, noting the slight tremor in her hands. "And this noise, it came from where precisely?" he pressed. She hesitated, pointing vaguely toward the study's rear window, which overlooked the manor's gardens. Poirot made a mental note. The window was unlatched, a detail Japp's men had overlooked. Next he approached Victor, whose boyish face was drawn tight. "Monsieur Langston, you were close to Sir Reginald, a protégé, non? Yet debts hung over you like a storm cloud." Victor's eyes narrowed, but he admitted to borrowing money for his extravagances, as he called them. "I was going to pay him back," he insisted. "He believed in me." Poirot tilted his head. "And where were you when the scream rang out?" Victor claimed he was in the billiards room, alone, practicing shots to calm his nerves after losing a match. No one could confirm his story, and Poirot's moustache twitched with interest. Dr. Thorne was less forthcoming. When asked about her whereabouts, she snapped her journal shut and said she'd been in the library, researching chess openings. "I don't sleep well during tournaments," she said curtly. Poirot noticed her pen, its nib stained with fresh ink, yet the journal's pages were oddly sparse. "You write much, mademoiselle, but reveal little," he observed. She met his gaze defiantly, but said nothing more. Colonel Blackwell was the most volatile. "I was in my room, changing for supper," he growled when questioned. "This is a damned outrage, Poirot. Reginald was my friend." Yet Poirot detected a flicker of unease when he mentioned the cigar smoke. "You smoke, Colonel, oui? A particular brand, perhaps?" Blackwell's face reddened, and he admitted to enjoying a cigar earlier, but claimed it was in the garden, not the study. Poirot smiled thinly, filing away the discrepancy. As the interviews concluded, Poirot stepped outside to the garden, where the study's rear window offered a clear view of the crime scene. The ground beneath was soft from recent rain, and he spotted faint footprints. Small, likely a woman's, leading to a hedge. Nearby, a cigar stub lay discarded, its band marked with a distinctive crest. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered. "The night moves in an L shape, unpredictable, yet precise. So too does our killer." Back inside, Poirot gathered the suspects for a brief announcement. "Mes amis, this murder is a game of chess, and each of you is a piece on the board. But fear not, Hercule Poirot never loses at such games." The room fell silent, eyes darting with suspicion. He dismissed them, but not before noticing Victor slip a small object into his pocket. A chess piece, perhaps. As the day wore on, Poirot confided in Japp. "The killer is among us, but they play a dangerous game. The footprints, the cigar, the chipped pawn, these are moves, not mistakes." Japp scratched his head, muttering about needing more men, but Poirot was already steps ahead, his mind mapping the board. This chapter closes with the manor locked down, the suspects under scrutiny, and Poirot's little grey cells working overtime. The clues are mounting, but the killer's next move remains hidden. Join us next time as we uncover more secrets in the shadow of the Ivory Chessboard. Chapter 3: The Bishop's Diagonal. The afternoon sun hung low over Hargrove Manor, its golden rays doing little to warm the chill of suspicion that gripped the household. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and the faint scent of old paper. His fingers danced lightly over the spines, pausing at a worn volume on chess strategy, its pages dog-eared and marked with Sir Reginald's precise handwriting. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The library, he sensed, held more than books. It held motives cloaked in shadow, like a bishop slicing across a chessboard's diagonal. He began by examining the desk where Dr. Amelia Thorne claimed to have spent the evening of the murder. A single lamp cast a soft glow, illuminating a scattering of papers, chess diagrams mostly, but one sheet caught his eye. A letter, half-written, addressed to Sir Reginald. The words were sharp, accusing him of withholding something valuable, though the sentence trailed off, unfinished. The handwriting matched Dr. Thorne's precise script from her journal. "Interesting," Poirot murmured, slipping the letter into his pocket for later scrutiny. A nearby ink bottle was overturned, its contents dried into a dark stain, suggesting a moment of haste or anger. Had Dr. Thorne confronted Sir Reginald here before the fatal strike? Poirot's investigation led him next to the manor's upper floors, where the guest rooms lined a dimly lit corridor. He entered Victor Langston's room, finding it cluttered with chess magazines and a half-packed suitcase, as if the young prodigy had considered fleeing. A search of the drawers revealed a betting slip from a London bookmaker, marked with a debt of $2,000, more than Victor could hope to repay without a windfall. Tucked beneath it was a photograph of Lady Evelyn, her smile radiant, inscribed with the words, "To my knight, always." Poirot's moustache quivered. A knight protects the Queen, but at what cost? He pondered, noting the intimacy of the inscription. Outside, in the garden, Poirot revisited the footprints he'd spotted earlier. The small, delicate imprints led to a secluded arbour, where roses climbed a trellis in a riot of red. Hidden among the thorns, he found a silk scarf, embroidered with the initials E.H., Lady Evelyn Hargrove. The scarf was snagged, torn slightly, as if caught in a hurried escape. Poirot held it to the light, detecting a faint trace of perfume, the same floral scent that had lingered in the drawing room. "Madame Hargrove, you move too swiftly for innocence," he whispered, tucking the scarf into his coat. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot requested a private word with Colonel Blackwell. The old soldier sat stiffly, his cane tapping an impatient rhythm. Poirot produced the cigar stub from the garden, its crest matching the Colonel's favoured brand. "You said you smoked in the garden, Colonel, yet this was found near the study window. Care to explain?" Blackwell's scar twitched, and he admitted to wandering near the study after his cigar, claiming he'd been restless. "I heard nothing, saw nothing," he insisted. But his eyes avoided Poirot's piercing gaze. Poirot pressed further, asking about the dagger's origins. Blackwell's voice tightened as he confirmed it was a gift to Sir Reginald from their India days, one of a matched pair. "The other's still in India," he said. But Poirot noted the hesitation, a crack in the Colonel's armour. As evening approached, Poirot gathered the suspects for dinner, observing their interactions like a grandmaster studying an opponent's opening. Lady Evelyn avoided Victor's gaze, her laughter forced as she spoke of trivialities. Victor, meanwhile, toyed with a fork, his eyes darting to the chessboard, which had been carefully reset by the police. Dr. Thorne ate in silence, her journal now tucked away, while Colonel Blackwell drank heavily, his temper flaring when a servant spilled wine. Poirot, ever the observer, noted a subtle exchange. Victor passed a napkin to Lady Evelyn, and her fingers lingered on his for a fraction too long. After dinner, Poirot slipped into the study once more, drawn to the locked cabinet. With Japp's permission, he picked the lock, a skill from his younger days, and examined the remaining artifacts. Among them was a small ivory box, intricately carved, containing a single chess piece, a black queen, its base scratched as if pried from the board. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. The queen moves freely, but this one was hidden. Why? He replaced the box, his mind racing with possibilities. Before retiring, Poirot confronted Dr. Thorne about the letter. She admitted to writing it, accusing Sir Reginald of keeping a rare chess manuscript she believed was rightfully hers. He laughed it off, she said bitterly. But I never went to the study that night. Her defiance rang hollow, and Poirot sensed a deeper truth buried in her words. As night fell, the manor grew quiet save for the creak of old wood and the distant howl of wind. Poirot sat by the fire, the chipped pawn and silk scarf on the table before him. The bishop cuts across the board, unseen until it strikes, he mused. Our killer moves similarly, but their path is becoming clearer. The clues were aligning, each pointing to a different suspect, yet none fully revealing the hand behind the dagger. This chapter ends with Poirot closing in on the truth, the manor's secrets unraveling like a well-played game. The scarf, the letter, the hidden queen. What do they mean? Stay tuned as we follow the next move in this deadly match. Chapter 4. The rooks advance. The moon hung low over Hargrove Manor, casting silver light through the tall windows of the drawing room, where Hercule Poirot sat alone, his eyes fixed on the ivory chessboard. Its pieces gleamed under the chandelier, each one a silent witness to the murder. Poirot's fingers hovered over the black queen he'd found in the locked cabinet, its scratched base a clue to a hidden maneuver. The rook moves straight, bold, unyielding, he murmured, and so too does our killer, advancing with purpose. Tonight, he resolved to uncover the connections binding the suspects to the crime, like a rook claiming control of an open file. Poirot began his day with a visit to the manor's kitchen, where the staff bustled under the weight of grief and suspicion. He questioned the head cook, a stout woman named Mrs. Baxter, who had served Sir Reginald for decades. She revealed that the evening of the murder, a tray of coffee had been sent to the study at Sir Reginald's request, delivered by a young maid named Clara. He was particular about his coffee, Mrs. Baxter said, wiping flour from her hands. Black, no sugar, and always in his favourite porcelain cup. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The cup was missing from the crime scene, a detail that gnawed at his orderly mind. Clara, trembling under Poirot's gentle but insistent questioning, admitted to leaving the tray outside the study door, as Sir Reginald had been in a mood and preferred privacy. I heard voices, sir, she whispered. Low and angry, but I couldn't make out words. Poirot thanked her, his mind noting the possibility of an unseen visitor. Next, Poirot turned his attention to the manor's groundskeeper, a grizzled man named Tom who tended the gardens. Tom confirmed the rear window's latch was often left loose, a habit Sir Reginald ignored despite warnings. Found a broken rose stem near the arbour that night, Tom added, scratching his beard. Odd, like someone trampled through in a hurry. Poirot recalled the silk scarf with Lady Evelyn's initials, its tier matching the thorns of the arbour's roses. He asked Tom to keep quiet about the find, sensing the grounds held more secrets yet. In the afternoon, Poirot requested a private audience with Lady Evelyn in the conservatory, a glass-walled haven filled with exotic plants. She sat poised, her hands folded, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as Poirot produced the torn scarf. Madame, this was found near the study window. It bears your initials. Her composure faltered, and she claimed to have lost the scarf days earlier during a walk. I often stroll the gardens, she said, her voice too light. Poirot pressed, mentioning the footprints, small, like hers. Many women wear such shoes, she countered, but her fingers tightened around her necklace. Poirot let the matter drop, but his suspicion deepened. Lady Evelyn was hiding something, perhaps a rendezvous that turned deadly. Later, Poirot sought Victor Langston in the billiards room, where the young man was practicing shots with a distracted air. Poirot confronted him about the photograph inscribed by Lady Evelyn. Victor flushed, admitting to a friendship with her but denying anything improper. "She's lonely," he said, his voice low. Sir Reginald was cold to her. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And this loneliness, did it lead you to the study that night?" Victor swore he'd stayed away, but Poirot noticed a chess piece, a white knight, poking from his pocket, its edge worn as if handled obsessively. "You carry a piece, monsieur, like a talisman." "Or a trophy," Victor stammered, claiming it was a habit from tournaments, but Poirot filed away the detail. Dr. Amelia Thorne proved elusive, found in the library again, poring over a chess journal. Poirot asked about the rare manuscript she'd accused Sir Reginald of withholding. Her eyes flashed behind her glasses. "It was my father's, a gift from a grandmaster, stolen by Hargrove years ago." She claimed to have let the matter go, but Poirot sensed her bitterness ran deep. He noticed a smudge of ink on her sleeve, matching the spilled bottle in the library. "You write with passion, mademoiselle, but do you act with it too?" She bristled, refusing to answer, and Poirot left her with a knowing smile. Colonel Blackwell was in the smoking room, his mood dark as the whiskey in his glass. Poirot questioned him about the second dagger from India, the twin to the murder weapon. Blackwell grew cagey, insisting it was lost years ago during a move. "Reginald kept the one we had," he said, his scar twitching. Poirot mentioned the cigar smoke in the study, and Blackwell snapped, "I told you, I smoked outside." His anger betrayed a crack in his story, and Poirot wondered if the Colonel's loyalty to Sir Reginald had soured into betrayal. As dusk settled, Poirot returned to the study, drawn to the chessboard once more. He set up the pieces as they'd been found, noting the Black Queen's position again. It was a move that could trap the White King, but only if played with precision. He found a faint scratch on the board itself, near the edge, as if something heavy had been dragged across it. "The rook advances, claiming space," he mused. But what was moved here, and why? Dinner that evening was tense, the suspects barely speaking. Poirot watched as Lady Evelyn dropped her fork, her hand shaking when Victor offered to pick it up. Dr. Thorne excused herself early, citing a headache, while Colonel Blackwell muttered about the indignity of being confined. Poirot remained silent, his mind piecing together the puzzle. The missing coffee cup, the trampled rose, the scratched queen, the worn knight. As the night deepened, Poirot sat by the fire, the Black Queen in his hand. "The rook's path is clear, but the killer's is cunning," he said to himself. "Each clue builds the board, but the checkmate is still out of reach." The manor held its breath, waiting for the next move. This chapter ends with Poirot tightening the net, each clue a step closer to the truth. The suspects' stories are fraying, but who will break first? Join us next time as the game intensifies. Chapter 5. The Queen's Sacrifice. The dawn broke over Hargrove Manor with a grey pallor, as if the sky itself mourned the secrets buried within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the estate's sprawling lawn, his eyes scanning the horizon where mist clung to the trees. The ivory chessboard, now under lock and key in the study, haunted his thoughts. The Queen, he mused. She is the most powerful piece, yet sometimes she must be sacrificed to win the game. Who, I wonder, is our Queen, and what was their sacrifice? Today, Poirot aimed to unravel the emotional undercurrents driving the killer's hand, probing deeper into the hearts of the suspects. He began in the manor's attic, a dusty maze of crates and forgotten relics, where he hoped to find traces of the past that might illuminate the present. Among the cobwebs, he discovered a trunk marked with Sir Reginald's initials, its lock rusted but easily opened. Inside lay letters from his time in India, yellowed and brittle, detailing his partnership with Colonel Blackwell in the ivory trade. One letter, dated 20 years prior, hinted at a falling out over profits, with Blackwell accusing Sir Reginald of cheating him. "A motive that festers like a wound," Poirot noted, tucking the letter away. Nearby he found a small locked diary, its key missing. The cover bore the initials E.H., Lady Evelyn Hargrove. Forcing it open would damage it, so Poirot left it for now, suspecting it held secrets of her own. Descending to the breakfast room, Poirot found the suspects gathered, their faces drawn from sleepless nights. He turned his attention to Victor Langston, whose nervous energy had grown more pronounced. Poirot invited him for a walk along the manor's gravel path, hoping to catch him off guard. "Monsieur, your devotion to Lady Evelyn is clear, but is it love or leverage?" he asked bluntly. Victor's jaw tightened, and he admitted to caring for her deeply, but insisted their bond was platonic. "She deserved better than him," he said of Sir Reginald, his voice bitter. Poirot probed further, mentioning the white knight in Victor's pocket. Victor claimed it was a keepsake from a tournament win, but his fingers fidgeted, betraying unease. "A knight defends," Poirot said softly, "but sometimes he oversteps." Next, Poirot sought Dr. Amelia Thorne in the library, where she sat surrounded by chess books. He confronted her about the ink smudge on her sleeve, linking it to the spilled bottle. "You were upset, mademoiselle, perhaps enough to act rashly." Dr. Thorne's eyes flashed, but she admitted to knocking over the ink during a heated moment alone, frustrated by Sir Reginald's refusal to return her father's manuscript. "It was my legacy," she said, her voice cracking. Poirot noticed a faint tremor in her hands, and a glance at her journal revealed a new entry, a sketch of the Ivory Chessboard, with the Black Queen circled repeatedly. "You study the board, yet you hide your moves," he observed, leaving her visibly shaken. In the afternoon, Poirot approached Colonel Blackwell in the smoking room, where the air was thick with the scent of his cigars. Producing the letter from the attic, Poirot asked about the old grudge. Blackwell's face darkened, and he admitted to resenting Sir Reginald's wealth built on their shared ventures. "He took more than his share," Blackwell growled, "but I'd not kill for it." Poirot mentioned the second dagger, pressing for details. Blackwell claimed it was stolen during a robbery in India, but his eyes darted to the side, a tell Poirot noted with interest. "Old wounds bleed anew, Colonel," he said, leaving the man to stew in his discomfort. Lady Evelyn proved the most elusive, found in the conservatory tending to a wilting orchid. Poirot returned her scarf, watching her reaction. "You lost this near the study, madame. Yet you claim to have been elsewhere." Her cheeks flushed, and she insisted the scarf must have been stolen. "Someone's framing me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Poirot's eyes softened, but he pressed on, asking about the diary in the attic. Her expression froze, and she claimed it was a childhood keepsake, long forgotten. "Yet it is locked, and you guard the key," Poirot said, noting her hand slip to her pocket, where a faint outline suggested a small key. As evening fell, Poirot returned to the study, drawn to the chessboard once more. He examined the scratch on its edge, discovering a tiny splinter of ivory embedded in the wood. It matched the chipped pawn he'd found earlier, suggesting someone had struck the board in haste. A moment of rage, perhaps, he mused, or a deliberate distraction. He then noticed a faint outline on the desk, where the missing coffee cup might have sat. A search of the room revealed nothing, but a faint stain on the carpet near the window hinted at spilled liquid. Coffee, perhaps, hastily wiped away. At dinner, the tension was palpable. Victor avoided Lady Evelyn's gaze, while Dr. Thorne's fork trembled as she ate. Colonel Blackwell drank heavily, his temper flaring when a servant bumped his chair. Poirot observed silently, his mind weaving connections. The diary, the letter, the splinter, the stain. He announced to the group, "The Queen's sacrifice is bold, but it leaves traces. I am close, mes amis, to naming the hand that moved her." Later, in his room, Poirot laid out his clues. The pawn, the scarf, the letter, the sketched queen. "Each suspect plays a role," he whispered, "but the Queen's move is the key. Was it love, revenge, or greed that drove her?" The manor seemed to hold its breath, the chessboard's shadow looming larger. This chapter closes with Poirot circling the truth, each clue a move toward checkmate. The suspects' facades are cracking, but the killer remains one step ahead. Join us next time as the game draws closer to its deadly end. Chapter 6. The Pawn's Promotion. The air in Hargrove Manor grew heavier with each passing hour, as if the walls themselves absorbed the weight of unspoken truths. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his gaze fixed on the ivory chessboard, now locked in a glass case by Inspector Japp's orders. The chipped pawn he'd pocketed days ago rested in his hand, its tiny flaw a whisper of the killer's misstep. "The pawn," Poirot murmured, "so humble, yet with ambition it becomes a queen. Who among our players sought such a transformation?" Today he resolved to chase the smallest clues, those overlooked details that could shift the game's balance. Poirot began by revisiting the manor's back staircase, a narrow passage used by servants to move discreetly. Clara, the young maid, had mentioned hearing voices near the study, and Poirot suspected the staircase offered a hidden route to the crime scene. He found a faint scuff mark on the wooden steps, the size and shape of a man's boot. Too large for Victor's slender frame, but a possible match for Colonel Blackwell's heavy tread. At the base of the stairs, tucked behind a loose panel, he discovered a crumpled cigarette case engraved with the initials M.B. Marcus Blackwell. The case held a single cigarette, its tobacco laced with a faint chemical scent Poirot couldn't place. A soldier's habit, perhaps, he mused, or a soldier's secret. Next, Poirot sought out the manor's butler, Mr. Grayson, a stoic man who had served Sir Reginald for 20 years. Grayson confirmed that the coffee tray Clara delivered was collected later that night, but the porcelain cup was never returned to the kitchen. "Sir was particular about that cup," Grayson said, his voice steady but his eyes uneasy. "He'd never misplace it." Poirot asked about unusual behaviour before the murder. Grayson hesitated, then admitted to overhearing a late-night conversation in the drawing room between Sir Reginald and Dr. Amelia Thorne, their voices raised over something about a book. Poirot's mind flashed to the manuscript Dr. Thorne claimed as her legacy. Could it be more than a scholarly dispute? In the garden, Poirot examined the arbour where the torn scarf was found. He noticed a faint indentation in the soil, rectangular and shallow, as if a small box had been buried and then unearthed. Digging carefully, he found nothing but disturbed earth, but the shape matched the ivory box that held the Black Queen. "Someone hid something here," he whispered, and retrieved it in haste. The proximity to Lady Evelyn's scarf deepened his suspicion of her movements that night. Poirot then confronted Victor Langston in the library, where the young man was flipping through a chess manual with little focus. Producing the betting slip from Victor's room, Poirot asked, "Your debts, monsieur, could they drive a man to desperate acts?" Victor's face paled, and he admitted to borrowing from unsavoury lenders, but swore Sir Reginald had promised to help. "He saw me as a son," Victor said, his voice breaking. Poirot noticed a faint ink stain on Victor's cuff, similar to Dr. Thorne's, and asked if he'd been in the library the night of the murder. Victor claimed he hadn't, but his eyes flicked to the desk where the spilled ink bottle sat. "You play the knight, but your moves are not so noble," Poirot said, leaving Victor visibly rattled. Dr. Amelia Thorne was next, found in the conservatory sketching flowers with a distracted hand. Poirot mentioned Grayson's account of her argument with Sir Reginald. She stiffened, admitting to confronting him about the manuscript, but insisting it ended peacefully. "He promised to return it," she said, though her tone lacked conviction. Poirot pointed to the sketch in her journal, a pawn circled with the word promotion written beside it. "A curious choice, mademoiselle," he said. "Does it reflect your ambitions?" She snapped the journal shut, her face flushed, and refused to answer further. Colonel Blackwell was in the billiards room, his cane tapping an angry rhythm. Poirot presented the cigarette case, watching the colonel's scar twitch. "I lost it weeks ago," Blackwell growled, but admitted to smoking near the study window that night, claiming he needed air after a heated chess match. Poirot asked about the chemical scent, and Blackwell shrugged it off as cheap tobacco. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The Colonel's story was fraying, and the case's discovery on the staircase suggested a more deliberate presence. Lady Evelyn was in her private sitting room, surrounded by portraits of Hargrove ancestors. Poirot asked about the diary in the attic, noting her hand drift to her pocket. "It's personal," she said, her voice sharp. "Nothing to do with this." Poirot mentioned the buried box in the garden, and her eyes widened briefly before she regained composure. "I know nothing of that," she insisted, but her fingers clutched the key in her pocket, a gesture Poirot did not miss. At dinner, the suspects sat in uneasy silence, their glances heavy with distrust. Poirot announced, "The pawn's promotion is a subtle move, but it changes the game. I see your moves, mes amis, and they betray you." Victor dropped his glass. Dr. Thorne's fork froze mid-air, and Blackwell's hand tightened on his cane. Lady Evelyn excused herself, claiming a headache, but Poirot caught her slipping a note to Victor under the table. Later, in his room, Poirot laid out the clues: the cigarette case, the scuff mark, the buried box's outline, the pawn's sketch. "The pawn seeks to rise," he whispered, "but whose hand guides it?" The Manor's secrets were closing in, each clue a step toward the killer's identity. This chapter ends with Poirot piecing together the puzzle, the suspect's lies unraveling like a poorly played endgame. The cigarette case, the buried box, what do they conceal? Stay tuned as the chessboard's truth draws nearer. Chapter 7. The King's Shadow. The morning mist clung to Hargrove Manor like a shroud, wrapping the estate in a silence broken only by the distant caw of crows. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floor as he surveyed the portraits lining the walls. Stern faces of Hargrove ancestors staring down, their eyes seeming to guard the manor's secrets. The ivory chessboard, still locked in its glass case in the study, loomed in his mind, its pieces a silent jury in this deadly game. "The king," Poirot mused, his voice barely a whisper, "stands tall but vulnerable, casting a shadow where the killer hides. Today we step into that shadow." His little grey cells buzzed with purpose, determined to unravel the web of lies through meticulous observation and bold confrontation. Poirot began his investigation in the manor's east wing, where Sir Reginald's private office lay, a room few entered. The door creaked open to reveal a space untouched by the chaos of the murder, a mahogany desk, neatly stacked ledgers, and a wall of photographs from Sir Reginald's travels. Poirot's eyes fell on a faded image of a younger Sir Reginald and Colonel Blackwell in India, standing beside a pile of ivory tusks, their smiles triumphant but strained. A handwritten note on the back read, "Delhi, 1905, our fortune sealed." Poirot's moustache twitched. The ivory trade had bound the men, but had it also bred betrayal? Digging deeper, he found a ledger detailing payments to Blackwell, abruptly stopped 5 years ago. A partnership dissolved, Poirot noted. But why, and at what cost? Next he examined a locked drawer in the desk, its key missing. With a hairpin borrowed from a maid, Poirot deftly picked the lock, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a red ribbon. They were from Lady Evelyn, written years before her marriage to Sir Reginald, addressed to an unknown recipient. The words were passionate, speaking of forbidden love and promises of escape. "My heart is yours, but my hand is bound," one read. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The letters suggested a lover from her past, but who? Victor Langston was too young to fit the timeline. Yet the photograph in his room hinted at a connection. Poirot pocketed one letter. Its ink faded, but its implications sharp. Leaving the office, Poirot sought the maid Clara in the servants' quarters, her nervous demeanour from their last talk still fresh in his mind. He found her polishing silver, her hands trembling slightly. "Mademoiselle Clara," he began gently, "you heard voices in the study. Can you recall anything more?" Clara bit her lip. then admitted to recognizing Victor's voice, low and urgent, though she couldn't make out the words. "I didn't want to say before," she whispered. "He's kind to us servants." Poirot pressed her about the missing coffee cup, and she revealed seeing it on a tray in the back staircase the morning after the murder, but it vanished before she could return it to the kitchen. "Someone took it," she said, her eyes wide. Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. Victor in the study, the cup on the staircase, a chemical-scented cigarette case. The pieces were aligning, but the picture remained incomplete. In the garden, Poirot returned to the arbour, where the rectangular indentation in the soil nagged at him. He knelt, brushing away leaves, and noticed a faint glint buried shallowly, a tiny silver key, small enough for a diary. It matched the locked diary in the attic with Lady Evelyn's initials. "Mon Dieu," Poirot breathed. "The Queen guards her secrets closely." He pocketed the key, suspecting it would unlock more than just a book. Nearby, he found a broken twig, snapped as if someone had crouched in the shadows, watching the study window. The killer, he realized, had planned their approach with care, using the garden as cover. Poirot then confronted Dr. Amelia Thorne in the drawing room, where she sat alone, her journal open to a page of chess notations. He produced the sketch of the pawn, with promotion written beside it. "Mademoiselle, your obsession with this move, does it mirror a desire to rise above your past?" Dr. Thorne's glasses glinted as she met his gaze. "You're fishing, Monsieur Poirot," she said, but her voice wavered. She admitted to resenting Sir Reginald's control over her father's manuscript, which she believed held rare chess strategies worth a fortune to collectors. "I wanted it back, not his life," she insisted. Poirot noticed a faint scratch on her hand, fresh and thin, as if from a thorn. "The garden, perhaps?" he asked lightly. Her silence was answer enough. Next, he found Colonel Blackwell on the terrace, staring over the lawn with a glass of brandy in hand. Poirot presented the ledger from the office, detailing their severed partnership. Blackwell's scar flushed red. "He cheated me out of my share," he admitted, his voice low. "But murder? I'm no coward to stab a man in the dark." Poirot mentioned the cigarette case on the staircase, its chemical scent unusual. Blackwell claimed it was a gift from India, lost months ago, but his fingers gripped his cane tightly. "You were near the study, Colonel, perhaps closer than you say," Poirot pressed. Blackwell stormed off, muttering about insults, but Poirot saw fear in his eyes. Lady Evelyn was in the conservatory, tending to her orchids with a distracted air. Poirot held up the silver key, watching her face pale. "Madame, this opens your diary, no? Shall we read it together?" Her hand flew to her pocket, finding it empty, and she stammered that the diary was private, filled with silly thoughts. Poirot's smile was gentle, but unrelenting. Silly thoughts do not require locks, nor do they lead to gardens at midnight. She begged him to leave it be, tears welling, but Poirot sensed her fear was not of exposure, but of something, or someone, else. Victor Langston was in the billiards room, his shots erratic. Poirot confronted him about Clara's testimony, placing him in the study. Victor's face crumpled, and he admitted to speaking with Sir Reginald about his debts, begging for more time. He laughed, said I'd never be free, Victor said, his voice raw. Poirot asked about the coffee cup, and Victor claimed ignorance, but his eyes flicked to the door, as if expecting someone. "You carry a knight, monsieur, but do you also carry guilt?" Poirot asked. Victor's silence spoke volumes. At dinner, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Poirot announced, "The king's shadow hides the truth, but I see its edges. The diary, the cup, the key, each points to a move in this deadly game." Lady Evelyn's fork clattered to her plate. Dr. Thorne's jaw tightened. Blackwell drained his glass, and Victor stared at the table. Poirot excused himself early, slipping to the attic to unlock the diary. Its pages revealed Lady Evelyn's affair, not with Victor, but with a man from her past, someone Sir Reginald had threatened to ruin. The final entry, dated the day of the murder, read, "He knows. I must act." As night fell, Poirot sat by the fire, the diary, key and letter before him. "The king falls, but the shadow remains," he whispered. The killer played for freedom, but whose? The manor's walls seemed to close in, the chessboard's power growing stronger. This chapter ends with Poirot on the brink of a breakthrough, the diary's secrets and the missing cup pointing to a motive rooted in desperation. The suspects' masks are slipping, but the killer's final move is still hidden. Join us next time as the endgame looms. Chapter 8. The Endgame's Edge. The twilight cast long, jagged shadows across Hargrove Manor, painting the ancient stone walls with an eerie glow that seemed to pulse with the weight of its secrets. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his silhouette framed against the window where the murder had unfolded just days ago. The ivory chessboard, now a silent sentinel under its glass case, gleamed faintly in the fading light, its pieces frozen in a game that had ended in blood. Poirot's fingers brushed the air above the board, as if tracing invisible moves. "The endgame," he whispered, his voice low but resolute, "is where the truth reveals itself. Each piece must now play its part or fall." Tonight, he vowed to push the suspects to their limits, forcing their hidden moves into the open with the precision of a grandmaster closing in on checkmate. Poirot began his day in the manor's music room, a seldom-used space where a grand piano stood draped in dust. He had learned from the butler, Mr. Grayson, that Sir Reginald occasionally retreated here to play chess alone, using a smaller travel board. Poirot found the board tucked in a velvet-lined case beneath the piano bench, its pieces worn from years of use. One piece, a black bishop, was missing, its absence marked by a faint outline in the velvet. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, recalling the black queen hidden in the study's ivory box. He searched the room, his keen eyes catching a glint beneath a loose floorboard. Lifting it, he found the missing bishop, its base scratched in a pattern matching the chip on the pawn he carried. A piece out of place, he noted, like a player out of time. The discovery suggested someone had tampered with Sir Reginald's private games, perhaps to send a message, or to cover one. Next, Poirot ventured to the manor's stables, where the groundskeeper, Tom, was mucking out stalls. He questioned Tom about visitors to the garden the night of the murder, probing for details about the broken twig and disturbed soil near the arbor. Tom, wiping sweat from his brow, recalled seeing a figure in a dark coat near the study window just before the scream, but the fog had obscured their face. "Moved quick, they did," Tom said, like they knew the paths. Poirot asked about the rectangular indentation in the soil, and Tom admitted to finding a small metal tin there the next morning, empty, but smelling faintly of oil. "Thought it was rubbish," Tom said, handing it over. The tin was unremarkable, but its lid bore a faint scratch as if pried open. Poirot pocketed it, suspecting it had held something incriminating, perhaps the chemical from Colonel Blackwell's cigarette case. Returning to the manor, Poirot sought Lady Evelyn in her private sitting room, where she sat embroidering a handkerchief, her movements mechanical. He produced the diary's final entry, reading aloud her words. "He knows. I must act." Her needle froze, and her eyes met his, wide with panic. "It wasn't about murder," she insisted, her voice trembling. "Reginald found letters from someone else. He threatened to expose me." Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle but unyielding. "This someone, madam, was it Victor Langston or another?" She shook her head, tears spilling. "Not Victor, someone from long ago. Reginald was cruel, holding it over me." Poirot noticed a faint bruise on her wrist, fresh and finger-shaped, as if someone had grabbed her forcefully. "Who left this mark?" he asked. She pulled her sleeve down, refusing to answer, but her fear was palpable. In the library, Poirot found Dr. Amelia Thorne surrounded by books, her journal now filled with frantic sketches of chess positions. He confronted her about the scratched bishop, linking it to her obsession with the board. "You know the pieces, mademoiselle, perhaps too well," he said, holding up the bishop. Dr. Thorne's face paled, and she admitted to handling Sir Reginald's travel board during a late-night visit to the music room seeking the manuscript. "I thought he kept it there," she said, her voice tight. "I found nothing but that old board." Poirot noticed a faint oil stain on her journal's cover, matching the scent of the tin from the garden. "You searched thoroughly, no? Perhaps beyond the music room?" Her silence confirmed his suspicion. She had been in the garden, possibly retrieving the tin. Colonel Blackwell was in the smoking room, his temper frayed after days of confinement. Poirot presented the metal tin, watching the colonel's scar twitch. "This was found where you smoked, Colonel." "What did it hold?" Blackwell claimed ignorance, insisting he'd only smoked his usual cigars. Poirot pressed, mentioning the chemical scent in the cigarette case. "A soldier carries many tools," he said, "some less innocent than tobacco." Blackwell slammed his cane on the floor, denying any involvement, but admitted to arguing with Sir Reginald about their past in India. "He owed me," Blackwell growled, "but I'd not kill for it." Poirot noted the colonel's heavy boots, their soles matching the scuff on the back staircase. "Your steps are loud, Colonel, even when you wish them silent," he said, leaving Blackwell fuming. Victor Langston was in the billiards room, his hands shaking as he lined up a shot. Poirot confronted him about Clara's testimony, placing him in the study. Victor's eyes darted, and he admitted to a second visit to Sir Reginald after their earlier talk about debts. "He offered me a deal," Victor said, his voice low. "Sell the ivory chessboard to clear my slate. I refused. It felt wrong." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And this refusal, did it anger him?" Victor nodded, saying Sir Reginald mocked his weakness. Poirot noticed a faint scratch on Victor's hand, similar to Dr. Thorne's, as if from the same thorny bush. "You wandered the garden, perhaps, to clear your head." Victor's silence was damning. At dinner, the suspects sat like pieces on a tense board, their glances sharp and guarded. Poirot stood, his voice calm but commanding. "The endgame approaches, mes amis. The bishop, the tin, the bruise. Each is a move toward truth. The king's shadow shrinks, and the killer's face grows clear." Lady Evelyn's hand trembled, spilling her wine. Dr. Thorne's pen scratched furiously. Blackwell's cane tapped a restless beat. Victor stared at his plate. Poirot excused himself, slipping to the music room to re-examine the travel board. He found a faint inscription on its underside. "To R.H. From Emby, a game to bind us." Blackwell again, tied to Sir Reginald by more than friendship. Later, in his room, Poirot laid out his clues. The scratched bishop, the metal tin, the diary's entry, the bruise. He opened the tin, finding a residue of white powder inside. Possibly a sedative, he thought, recalling the chemical scent. "The endgame is delicate," he whispered. The killer moved the bishop, hid the tin, but their hand trembles now. He cross-referenced the diary's dates with the letters in Sir Reginald's office, noting a gap that suggested Lady Evelyn's lover might still be active, perhaps even present. The manor's walls seemed to whisper, urging him closer to the truth. As midnight struck, Poirot stood by his window, the moon illuminating the garden below. He saw a figure slip toward the arbour. Victor, his coat dark against the mist. Poirot watched, unmoving, as Victor knelt, searching the soil. "The young knight seeks something lost," Poirot murmured. "Or something to hide." The chessboard's power loomed, its ivory pieces a mirror to the manor's dark heart. This chapter closes with Poirot at the edge of revelation, the clues converging like pieces in a tightening endgame. The bishop, the tin, the bruise. What final move do they signal? Stay tuned as the checkmate draws near and the killer's shadow fades. Chapter 9. The Checkmate's Whisper. The night wrapped Hargrove Manor in a velvet darkness, broken only by the flicker of candles in the windows. as if the estate itself held its breath, awaiting the final move. Hercule Poirot sat in his room, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the clues spread before him. The chipped pawn, the scratched bishop, the metal tin with its powdery residue, Lady Evelyn's diary, and the letter from Sir Reginald's office. The ivory chessboard, locked away in the study, seemed to pulse in his mind, its pieces whispering of betrayal and ambition. "The checkmate is near," Poirot murmured, his eyes glinting with resolve. "But the killer plays one last desperate move. Tonight, I force their hand." His plan was to stage a confrontation, using the suspect's fears to draw the truth into the light, like a king cornered on the board. Poirot began by revisiting the study at dawn, where the morning light revealed a detail he'd missed. A faint smear of white powder on the desk's edge, matching the residue in the metal tin. He summoned Inspector Japp, who confirmed the powder was a sedative, commonly used but potent in high doses. "Could have been slipped into that missing coffee cup," Japp suggested, scratching his head. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The killer ensured Sir Reginald was vulnerable, but who had access to his coffee? The cup's absence gnawed at him, a missing piece in the puzzle. He searched the study's bookshelves, finding a hollowed-out volume of chess history, its pages cut to conceal a small vial, empty, but bearing the same chemical scent as the tin. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered. The murder was planned with precision. Next, he sought the groundskeeper, Tom, in the stables, asking about Victor's midnight visit to the arbour. Tom, polishing a saddle, admitted to seeing Victor digging briefly before fleeing when a branch snapped nearby. "Looked spooked," Tom said, "like he'd lost something dear." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Victor's actions suggested he was retrieving or hiding evidence. He returned to the garden, examining the arbour's soil again. Beneath a layer of leaves, he found a single pearl, small and lustrous, likely from Lady Evelyn's necklace, which she'd clutched nervously during their talks. "The Queen leaves her mark," Poirot mused, pocketing the pearl, its presence tying Lady Evelyn to Victor's nocturnal search. Poirot then confronted Colonel Blackwell in the smoking room, where the air was thick with cigar smoke. He held up the cigarette case, its chemical scent now linked to the sedative. "Colonel, this held more than tobacco, non?" Blackwell's scar twitched, and he admitted to using sedatives for sleepless nights, a habit from his army days. "Never gave it to Reginald," he snapped, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Poirot pressed, mentioning the scuff mark on the back staircase. "Your boots, Colonel, place you near the study at the wrong moment." Blackwell's cane slammed against the table, but he offered no alibi, only a glare that spoke of defiance and fear. In the library, Poirot found Dr. Amelia Thorne, her journal now filled with cryptic notes alongside chess diagrams. He showed her the hollowed-out book, asking if she'd searched it for her father's manuscript. Her face paled, and she admitted to rummaging through Sir Reginald's books, desperate to reclaim her legacy. "I found nothing," she said, her voice tight. Poirot pointed to the oil stain on her journal, linking it to the tin. "You were in the garden, mademoiselle, perhaps with this?" She denied it, but her fingers trembled, and Poirot noticed a faint burn mark on her thumb, as if from handling a chemical. "Your passion for justice burns brightly," he said, "but does it burn for murder?" Lady Evelyn was in the conservatory, her hands pruning roses with a distracted air. Poirot presented the pearl, watching her hand fly to her necklace, now missing a bead. "Madame, you were in the arbour with Monsieur Langston, perhaps?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she confessed to meeting Victor that night, but only to warn him. "Reginald suspected us," she whispered, "but I swear, I only wanted to protect Victor." Poirot asked about the bruise on her wrist, and she admitted Sir Reginald had grabbed her during an argument about her past lover, threatening to disinherit her. "He was cruel," she said, "but I didn't kill him." Her words rang true, yet Poirot sensed she withheld a final truth. Victor Langston was in the drawing room, staring at the chessboard's empty case. Poirot confronted him about his garden search, producing the pearl. Victor's face crumpled, and he admitted to meeting Lady Evelyn to plan their future, believing Sir Reginald's death would free her. "I didn't touch him," he swore. "But I took the coffee cup. It was on the desk, and I panicked, thinking it'd point to me. He'd hidden it in the arbour, then retrieved it to dispose of elsewhere, but lost it in the dark." Poirot's gaze was stern. "You hide evidence, monsieur, but not your guilt." Victor's shoulders sagged, his knight's bravado fading. At lunch, Poirot gathered the suspects, his presence commanding silence. "The checkmate whispers mes amis," he said, his voice steady. "The powder, the pearl, the vial, each is a move you cannot retract. The killer is among you, and their mask slips." Lady Evelyn's hands shook, Dr. Thorne's eyes darted, Blackwell's cane stilled, and Victor avoided all gazes. Poirot announced a final gathering that evening where he would name the killer. "Be prepared," he said, "for the board reveals all." After lunch, Poirot slipped to the back staircase, searching for the missing cup. In a dusty corner, he found it, Sir Reginald's porcelain cup, its rim stained with the same white powder. "The final piece," he whispered, wrapping it carefully. He then opened Lady Evelyn's diary again, finding a hidden page tucked in the binding, written in code. Deciphering it, he read a single line: "The bishop falls to protect the queen." His mind raced. The bishop, the sedative, the cup, the killer's motive was crystallizing. As evening approached, Poirot sat by the fire, the clues arranged like a chessboard. The vial, the cup, the pearl, the coded note. "The killer played for freedom, but their moves betray them," he said softly. The manor's silence was deafening, the chessboard's shadow looming over the final act. This chapter ends with Poirot poised for checkmate, the clues converging to unmask the killer. The cup, the pearl, the code. What final truth do they hold? Join us for the thrilling conclusion as the Ivory Chessboard reveals its master. Chapter 10. Checkmate Revealed. The grand drawing room of Hargrove Manor was bathed in the soft glow of chandeliers, their light dancing across the polished ivory chessboard. Now freed from its glass case and placed at the room's centre like a judge presiding over a trial, Hercule Poirot stood beside it, his small frame commanding the space, his moustache perfectly groomed, and his eyes gleaming with the clarity of a man who had solved the puzzle. The suspects, Lady Evelyn Hargrove, Victor Langston, Dr. Amelia Thorne, and Colonel Marcus Blackwell, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces pale, their hands fidgeting. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his notebook ready, while the manor's staff hovered in the shadows, sensing the weight of the moment. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice steady and resonant. "The game is over. The ivory chessboard has spoken, and the killer's moves are laid bare. Tonight we deliver checkmate." Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, as he recounted the murder's prelude. Sir Reginald Hargrove, found dead in his study, a dagger in his chest. The ivory chessboard disturbed, its pieces scattered like clues to a deadly game. "This was no crime of passion," Poirot said, "but a calculated strike, planned with the precision of a grandmaster. Each of you had motive, opportunity, and secrets, but only one played the fatal move." He paused, letting the silence tighten the room's tension, then began to unravel the web of clues that had led him to the truth. He started with the chipped pawn, found on the study floor. "This pawn," he said, holding it aloft, "was struck in haste, its base damaged. It was no accident. It was a message, a symbol of ambition, of a pawn seeking to become a queen." His eyes flicked to Dr. Amelia Thorne, whose journal had obsessed over pawn promotion. "Mademoiselle Thorne, your bitterness over Sir Reginald's theft of your father's manuscript was profound. You argued with him that night, as the butler overheard, and your journal's sketches, pawns circled, queens marked, revealed your desire to reclaim your legacy. The oil stain on your journal matched the tin in the garden, and the scratch on your hand spoke of thorns from the arbor. You were there, searching for something hidden. Dr. Thorne's glasses glinted as she leaned forward, her voice sharp. I wanted the manuscript, not his life. Poirot nodded, his smile gentle but unyielding. Indeed, mademoiselle, your passion was for knowledge, not blood. The tin held no sedative. It held ink, used to forge a note to lure Sir Reginald to the study. But you did not wield the dagger. Poirot turned to Colonel Blackwell, producing the cigarette case with its chemical scent. Colonel, your partnership with Sir Reginald in the ivory trade ended in betrayal, as the ledger and letters revealed. Your boots left a scuff on the back staircase, and your cigar stub was found near the study window. You were there, watching, perhaps planning. The cigarette case held sedative powder, but not for murder, for your own sleepless nights, a habit you hid. Blackwell's scar twitched, his cane gripping tightly. I'd never stab a friend, he growled. Poirot raised a hand. Non, Colonel. Your anger was real, but your move was not the fatal one. You argued, you watched, but you did not strike. Next, Poirot faced Victor Langston, whose boyish charm had faded under the weight of suspicion. Monsieur Langston, your debts drove you to desperation, and your affection for Lady Evelyn was no secret. The photograph, the night in your pocket, your midnight search in the arbour, all pointed to you. You admitted to taking the coffee cup, fearing it implicated you, and Clara heard your voice in the study. Victor's eyes widened, his voice hoarse. I begged him for help, nothing more. Poirot nodded. You begged, and you stole the cup to protect another. But the dagger was not yours. Finally, Poirot turned to Lady Evelyn, her face pale, her hands clutching her necklace, now missing a pearl. Madame, your diary revealed a past lover, a secret Sir Reginald threatened to expose. The bruise on your wrist, the torn scarf, the pearl in the arbour, you were there, meeting Victor, planning escape. The coded note, the bishop falls to protect the queen, was your confession. Her tears fell, but she remained silent. Poirot's voice softened. You loved another, but you also loved freedom. Sir Reginald's cruelty, his threats, his grip, pushed you to act. Poirot stepped to the chessboard, lifting the black queen with its scratched base. The killer used the sedative, found in the cup and vial, to weaken Sir Reginald. The dagger, from his own collection, was wiped clean. A precise strike, by someone he trusted. The chessboard was disturbed to stage a struggle, but the chipped pawn and scratched queen betrayed the truth. He paused, his eyes locking on Lady Evelyn. Madame Hargrove, you slipped the sedative into the coffee, delivered by Clara. You entered through the back staircase, using the loose window. You stabbed Sir Reginald, your husband, to silence his threats and free yourself. The note in your diary, the pearl, the scarf, all point to you. You played the queen, sacrificing all for liberty. Lady Evelyn's composure shattered, her sobs echoing. He was going to ruin me, she cried. My past, my love, he'd have destroyed everything. Victor lunged to comfort her, but Japp's men stepped forward, cuffs ready. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm. The game is done, madame. You moved with cunning, but Hercule Poirot sees all. As Japp led Lady Evelyn away, the room fell silent. Poirot addressed the others. Dr. Thorne, your manuscript is in the hollowed book, safe now. Colonel, your debts are forgiven in death. Victor, your loyalty was noble, but misguided. He turned to the chessboard, resetting the pieces. The ivory chessboard is a mirror of the heart, beautiful, but stained by ambition. As the suspects dispersed, Poirot lingered, his fingers tracing the board's edge. Checkmate, he whispered, the manner's shadows fading with the truth. The game was over, the killer unmasked, and justice served. This chapter closes the mystery of the ivory chessboard. revealing Lady Evelyn as the killer, driven by fear and desperation. The clues, the pawn, the queen, the cup, the diary, wove a tale of betrayal and sacrifice. If you've enjoyed this journey, grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Comment below with your thoughts and join us for the next mystery.